Yes, I am currently a fellow at the Harvard Law School's Child Advocacy Program and am primarily interested in homelessness, and particularly homeless children.
Um, and then Don.
Hey, I'm Don McKinnon. I went to Williams College, but a lot longer ago. And I'm a board member of Kinetic. I got involved because I was a mentor to Brian and Jessica when they did the Business Plan Challenge. And my background is in music. I created a music company I sold to Starbucks and built the music business there. And I also helped Bono create Product Red. So I'm interested in innovative approaches to social change, which is what all you guys are doing.
Hello?
Great. See. Carol, are you on?
Hello?
Hello?
Carol, do you want to introduce yourself?
Did you say Cheryl?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Cheryl. I'm one of the chapter leaders at USC, and I'm co-leading the food and security team. I'm a current sophomore. Sorry, is there anything else?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Is there anyone else who has yet to introduce themselves? Want to give a quick introduction? Go through quickly.
Hi.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Hi. Hi, this is Lena. I'm also from USC. I'm a sophomore, and I'm one of the co-leads for the environmental team.
Thanks.
Hi, this is Steve Klass. I'm the Vice President for Campus Life at Williams College, and I'm also on the board of Kinetic.
Hi, this is Lizzie and Jack. We're the chapter leaders of Kinetic at Williams, and I'm on the consent team here. And
I'm on the drug epidemic team.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Hey, this is Jake. I'm a junior at Williams, and I'm co-leading one of the education teams.
Great. Is there anyone else who has yet to introduce themselves?
Yes, I haven't introduced myself. I'm Jessica. I'm the co-founder of Kinetic Global with Brian, and I at Williams served on food and security team, which designed suspended groceries, another food and security team that designed an after-school program or summer program for students at the intersection of sustainable agriculture and food insecurity.
I believe that is everyone. Unless is there anyone else on the call who has yet to introduce themselves?
I haven't formally introduced myself. I'm Catherine Parker. I graduated from Williams in 2016, helped found Kinetic with Jess and Brian. I was the co-leader of the food and security team that did suspended groceries with Jessica. And now I'm a process mentor. Also very excited to be here.
I can go.
I can go.
Oh, go for it, Will.
Great. My name is Will Sager. I'm a senior at Williams, and I was on the juvenile empowerment team, which created a program. It was with Olivia. We created a program for 4 kids from Pittsfield, and it was focused on juvenile empowerment. I'll leave it at that. I'll maybe let Olivia explain some more. And I'm a process mentor for USC and NYU.
Perfect. Jackie?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jackie Lane. I just graduated from Williams, class of 2016. I guess I won't get into what I'm doing now, but I started with Kinetic my freshman year, and I was a part of the suspended grocery food insecurity program. I dabbled a little bit in energy, and sustainable energy on college campuses, and then I moved to communications for Kinetic on the executive team. I'm a process mentor now for UWash in St. Louis and Williams College.
Great. And I think Olivia?
I think Olivia might be having trouble with her audio.
Okay. I think we'll just get started then. So thanks again for everyone who's made the time to join the call today. Some of the goals for today's call is just kind of get a sense of what kind of resources are out there for the campuses and kind of dive into some of the nitty-gritty advice of how to actually approach a Kinetic project. There's a lot of people on this call who have experience implementing projects of different kinds and kind of troubleshooting different kinds of roadblocks. And so we'll talk about some of those today. But I want to welcome some of the student team members that we have on the call, as well as the mentors and Kinetic Global team members we have as well. I also know that there are a number of people that can't make the call today for a number of reasons. So we're also recording this call, so that'll be available for other teams who might access it at a later date. So just be aware that we are recording and speak accordingly. And we will do a longer introduction to the Kinetic mentors in a second, but I want to give a couple brief announcements. The first being is there's the bi-monthly update coming up for end of February. Katie will send out some more information on that, but just keep that in the back of your mind that we'll be touching base, kind of get a sense of sharing where different teams are at, to kind of get a better sense of how we can. Sounds like there's a little bit of feedback there. There we go. And then the other big announcement is that at the end of the semester, we will be holding a summit call, much like this one, but a little bit larger and more defined, where we hope to acknowledge some of the team's accomplishments this year and provide more of a platform for experience sharing of the successes that different teams have had, and really talk about kind of the type of work that we as a whole network are up to, and hopefully have some really exciting conversations there. So that will likely be in April, and there'll be some information coming out about that in the future. So that's the big announcements, and I'll turn it over to Jess, who is going to kind of talk through a little bit of the structure of how this call is going to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Before I get into the structure and some of the introductions of the mentors, I just would want to ask anyone if there starts to get a little bit of weird feedback on the call, if you wouldn't just mind muting yourself, assuming you're not talking, just to make sure that everyone can hear as well as possible. So after that, okay, so the structure of this call is going to be sort of as follows. Katie is going to ask the mentors a number of questions about their experience in Kinetic and go through some questions about the 3 phases of research, design, and implementation. I just wanted to note that the responses are a really helpful introduction to our mentors' experience in Kinetic, but even more so than that, they're a valuable jumping off point for future conversations. And then I'm going to introduce the mentors, and they'll tell you a little bit about themselves as well and recap which schools they're serving as mentors to. You can also find that information on the website. And Katie will moderate the question and answer session, and she'll also, at the end of that, ask other members on the call if there are any questions they want to ask as well. And if you have other questions, you're welcome to reach out to the mentors. Their email addresses are also on the website. So without further ado, I'm going to talk through some of the bios of our mentors. So Catherine, as you briefly heard, helped co-found Kinetic, and she served as the co-leader on the food and security implementation team that implemented suspended groceries. And I had the pleasure of actually serving with her as my co-leader, and I can say that she's an incredibly thoughtful, smart, and dedicated leader, and someone who is really very good at thinking creatively through different problems. Is a great resource. So Olivia joined Kinetic the second year of Kinetic's existence, and she played a shaping role on the executive team. She co-led the juvenile empowerment team, which designed Kinetic in the courts. And Olivia is an incredibly passionate and driven leader. We're thrilled to have her. So Will joined Kinetic also in the second year of existence and played a shaping role on the executive team. And Will also served on the juvenile empowerment team, which designed Kinetic in the courts. And he's an incredibly insightful, incredible leader and has been a really valuable member of the Kinetic family. And then Jackie is another co-founder of Kinetic, served on the team since her freshman year, and she has a very funny story for how she came to join Kinetic, which she can go into or not. And she served on the food and security implementation team that designed suspended groceries. So I had the pleasure of working with her. And she's an incredibly creative and dynamic thinker. And all in all, these mentors all served on the Kinetic executive team, played a really important role in shaping Kinetic into the organization it is today. And we're really lucky to have them as mentors. And then I just want to add that the mentors are all really excited about serving as resources and co-problem solvers with you all. And I couldn't speak more highly of the insight and the advice that they're able to offer. Katie, do you want to jump into the question and answer session? Or actually, I'm sorry, before you do that, I know you already gave brief introductions, but if you wanted to talk very briefly about the initiatives that your team designed or the specific roles that you guys held, that might be a good starter, and then Katie will jump into the question and answer session.
Sounds great.
Okay?
Okay, so this is Catherine, so I'll go first. I guess a little bit more detail. My first year on Kinetic, I was on what was then the Hunger team, which ultimately morphed into the food insecurity and suspended groceries team. I joined leading it with just my second year when it was already kind of in its design phase. So we took that from, or when it was already, in its implementation phase, we took that from design through implementation, which was a really exciting transition. And I'm happy to talk all about how the challenges that come with transitioning from design to implementation. I was also on the executive team once we started formalizing Kinetic more and making it into the organization it's now become. And first generally on the executive team, and then in the role as director of people and culture, I think it came down to. So basically worked on creating kind of the community feel of Kinetic and representing us externally to Williams, and also creating strong team environments internally. And yeah, so anything else that I should talk about, Jess?
I think that's perfect. Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, yep, great.
Olivia, do you mind going next?
Yeah, hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm Olivia, and I'm a current senior at Williams. Sorry that I wasn't able to introduce myself earlier. I realized that my audio wasn't working when everybody went silent and I began talking and they didn't respond. But so I was on the Kinetic juvenile empowerment team, and so Will, as he said before, Will and I worked on that team to create an alternative sentencing program for 4 kids that were involved in the juvenile justice system. Their punishment was to hang out with Will and I for a summer, which I thought was pretty fun. And we did team building exercises, and we kind of took those 4 kids through the Kinetic process. It came with it, it brought with it its fair share of challenges and times where it didn't go according to plan. So I think that one thing that I'll be able to offer is thoughts on flexibility and how to differently weight planning versus execution, which is necessarily going to be messy and tough and still cool.
Great. So to follow Olivia, my name is Will. Again, I'm a senior at Williams. And so I worked on Kinetic in the courts, and I think that one thing that I'll especially be able to speak to is the importance of building connections with the communities that Kinetic teams are working with, and the importance of coordinating leadership within the team and from sort of your own position with those connections. I can tell you that none of the things that we did as leaders of Kinetic in the courts would have been possible without some key people in Pittsfield, which is, for those of you who don't live near Williamstown, it's a town about 40 minutes away that we drove to twice a day. And we relied upon the judges in the juvenile court there to sentence kids to our program. We relied on a probation officer named Nancy, who helped us out when there was a fight in the back of our car. And we relied on people at Williams who sort of allowed us to stand, on campus and have space to run our program. And so I think that one of the things that I'll speak to later, if it's helpful, is to how to facilitate relationships like that and how to embed programs, whether they be in juvenile empowerment or some other type of field, to really embed them and get them working on the ground.
Thanks, Will. So like I said, my name's Jackie. I started with Kinetic my freshman year and the first year, right when Kinetic was getting started. I won't tell you how I met Jessica and how I got brought into Kinetic, but please shoot me an email if you'd like to hear that story. So like I said, I've been a part of Kinetic since its inception, and so I've seen many iterations of the Kinetic process, and I've seen Kinetic go from 8 people to 30 people to 60 people, and I'm so excited to see how it's growing and continuing to change now. I think that I can be helpful because I love to think about the big picture. I love to think about how the pieces of the puzzle go together, and I've spent a lot of time with Catherine, with Will, with Brian, with everyone that you've just heard from, talking about the way Kinetic works and how it helps us achieve our greater goals. So I'm thrilled to be a part. I'm thrilled to hear from all of you, and I'm happy to see what Kinetic does beyond Williams. So thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackie, and also Olivia and Will and Catherine. So great. At this point, let's just do a question and answer session. And basically the way we'll run through this is I'll just ask you guys some questions kind of just about your background, how you became involved, and then we'll go through the research, design, and implementation questions. And then at the end, students on the call, or of course anyone else, can also answer follow-up questions. But yeah, so I have just some things written down here that we can go over. So first, I was hoping that you all could speak a little bit about some of the most valuable things that you took away from Kinetic, and also how your experience working at Kinetic at Williams was different from your expectation.
Why don't we go in the order of the introduction for all the questions?
Okay, so Catherine.
All right. So, okay, let me think about that. One of the things I think that I most took away from Kinetic is the importance of a supportive and open and passionate team. I think that the most exciting thing about Kinetic was working with other people who were so excited and passionate about these issues and wanted to make a difference, and who were willing to kind of like go out there on a limb with you and think of all of the crazy things that you could do to kind of combat these issues that are timeless and seem always to be there and always to be challenges for society, and kind of like go together down all the crazy paths. And you really need a team that is going to be non-judgmental and going to be with you when you go on those tangents to make that process work. So that was one of the most rewarding and exciting things for me about Kinetic was doing that with a team. And I think what really kind of, for me, the question that really fuels that the most is always asking, when you get to those roadblocks that inevitably come up. Always asking, not like, oh, okay, so never mind, let's go a different track, but like, oh, okay, so like, what is something that may not seem feasible, but we could do to get to design around this issue that's just come up. So that's that. Okay, so then the second part of the question was, what was different from my expectations?
Yeah.
Things failed a lot, a lot more than they succeeded. And at first, that was very disappointing to me because I would be really excited about something and I'd want it to work, and then it wouldn't, and I would get frustrated. And after a while, it was my favorite part about Kinetic because that is when you have those moments where it makes you realize that you've come up against something that is unique to the issue and that is one of the things that's making the issue the issue. And so that means that you've just gotten to know the issue better. And so therefore, that was always for me the opportunity to then be like, well, what can we do differently? So that ended up being, at first it was one of the most frustrating and discouraging parts of Kinetic, but it ended up being one of the best parts and the place where I felt like we could really dig in the most, probably, I would say. And also, I just wanted to touch on what Will said in his introduction about kind of embedding programs in the community that you work in. And I think this is one thing that we actually did not do very well with suspended groceries, especially in the beginning. And I mean, as we got further into implementation, we started to do it more. But this is so hugely important. And when I watched the way that the juvenile justice team ended up playing out and how that ended up, their program ended up playing out and how it thrived so much on that community support, I realized even more just how important that is. And I think that if suspended groceries had keyed into that earlier, we would have been much more successful than we were.
Great. Thanks so much, Catherine. Olivia, do you have anything to add to those points?
Yeah. The most valuable thing that I learned from Kinetic was definitely my own power, and not individually, but the power that our team had to go from literal nothingness. We were 7 people that were in a room together that were like, hey, what if we did something? To an actual program that like existed and had a budget and had kids and was involved with the court system and just was a real thing. And watching that implementation, or watching that process go from A to Z and complete was so cool because it wasn't creating real change or even creating something in our community isn't something that I necessarily thought that we had the power to do as college students, as William College students, for me as an individual. And taking that idea of how concerted effort and organization and passion can create something from nothing has really helped me become more confident in myself and more willing to attack all sorts of tough challenges in my non-kinetic life and really, really been impactful. And the thing that was the most different from my expectations in Kinetic is so first of all, the extent that I loved it. I didn't necessarily expect to be on a Kinetic call 3 years later when I joined as a freshman, but also the extent to which design thinking and the principles behind design thinking would become so important to me. So these ideas of brainstorming and getting as many ideas out there as possible without judgment. These ideas of researching, making sure that you talk to all the stakeholders before you begin something, and as opposed to just listening to what they say they want, kind of trying to listen between the lines and ask critical questions. And the whole design thinking philosophy really speaks to me. And when I joined Kinetic, I didn't necessarily think that would be so important.
All right, thank you so much, Olivia. Will, do you have anything you want to talk about in terms of what are some of the things you've taken away from Kinetic and how your experience with Kinetic has differed from your expectation going into it?
Sure. And for the purpose of being concise and everybody's time, I think I can condense those two questions and say that what I've taken away and what was different from my expectation was the importance of adaptability. When I came into Kinetic, I was inspired by the commitment of the group to understanding the problem that was being targeted and developing a solution that was reflective of the complexity of the problem. But I didn't realize that after doing so much research that when the program was actually being implemented, that most of it would be worthless. And I think that while most of while this may differ from program to program, I think that when solutions are implemented in sort of whatever field they're being implemented in, if you're not willing to change, I think that's the only way you can fail. And I think that if we had stuck with a plan that we had spent literally several months designing over the course of the year, the program that we had run, which lasted 6 weeks, would have been over within a couple of days, which is what I thought was going to happen. And so I want to just emphasize for everybody sort of in the initial stages of projects now and who eventually will be in final stages is that just as adaptability is important now, it's just as crucial later on. And I can't express how thankful I was to have been with a partner who was willing to be adaptable, because without that, it would have been far from successful.
Great, thank you so much, Will. And Jackie, do you have anything that you want to add about to these points?
Yeah, I think one of the things that surprised me the most about Kinetic, and this was after being in Kinetic for a while, it continued to surprise me. But I was sort of under the impression, I think this is similar to what Will said, that once you had a process down that worked, once you had the right idea, once you understood how the pieces fit together, then you'd be churning out success after success. And I think what has stuck with me the most about Kinetic is that there are people who get frustrated with the process, and I myself have been in a situation where I've been frustrated with the way a certain particular project is going, and I stop myself and think, okay, that's not the point, or that's not the only point. I think one of my absolute favorite things about Kinetic is that all of the people who have joined Kinetic are planning on doing something next, which is to say that these are skills that they like to use, these are skills that they want to get better at using, so they can go on to do their next big thing, their next personal project, or they want to start a nonprofit, or they want to own a business. Whatever it is, everyone in Kinetic is motivated to keep learning and keep growing, and that's so incredibly valuable, especially when you think about this as a way to practice those skills. And I think the second thing that I really took away from Kinetic that was different than I expected was these people that are so similar to me actually have very different skills than I possess. In being a part of Kinetic, I became very aware of my own strengths, my own comfort zone, and the places that I want to go and I want to take things naturally. And I was regularly sitting in a room with people who had a different perspective, a different way of taking apart a problem and putting it back together, and learning how to speak with people who thought so differently, and also learning to take on the character traits that I admired about them has helped me an incredible amount in my professional life. It's helped me in my personal life, in communicating with different kinds of people, and that is what Kinetic is to me. It's learning and growing and challenging yourself and doing something good for the community in the meantime, in the process.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jackie. Okay, so in thinking about the research phases that each of you were a part of, could you talk a little bit about how you approached even kind of beginning research and also what resources you found the most useful when you were in this research phase? So, Olivia, do you want to start this one?
Yeah. So my team was lucky in that we had an immediate connection with the probation office in Pittsfield. So our main research was, I think, the most valuable kind of research. It was talking to people. So we would go down to the Pittsfield Juvenile Court and we'd talk to two of the amazing judges that were the judges, and they'd tell us about what they saw as the flaws in the court, as the good things that the court did, and about the current alternative sentencing programs and all sorts of things. We talked to the judges, we talked to probation officers who really had a pretty good view into the minds of the kids involved in the system, and we were able to talk to some of the kids themselves that were on probation. This was a bit of a mixture between kind of prototyping and research, but we took 6 of our user group, and we did a test of an activity that we might do that summer with those kids that were on probation. And in doing so, we asked them what they thought about it, and more generally, kind of what they thought about the issues in the court system, about their role in it, and what could be better, what is good. And just talking to people was our main form of research, and that was incredibly useful. One thing that I think was an effective strategy in doing that was just letting them talk. I was in charge of driving the kids for a kind of separate thing, but I got about 45 minutes of just listening to the kids talking with one another before we did the program. So thinking about what they have to say, both when I'm explicitly asking them questions and when they were speaking amongst themselves, was really, really valuable. And yeah, talking to people, I think, is an amazing way to research.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Olivia. So yeah, Will, do you have anything that you want to add to kind of the research discussion?
Yeah, I think with research, I think what's interesting about Kinetic is it's about invention, but it's also not about reinventing the wheel. At least it wasn't for me. And I think that understanding the ways in which you're meant to invent as being part of this group, but also the ways in which you can build off of the resources that surround you. Olivia talked about being close to judges in Pittsfield. I think is really important. At the end of the day, most of us only have so much time and only so much energy to devote to everything that we do. And there are a lot of smart people around us, especially when we're in college, who we can look to and rely on when we're sort of trying to build solutions to problems that exist. And so whether or not it's food insecurity or juvenile empowerment, we were lucky enough to be able to build our program in some ways off of a model that already existed. But I think that in a lot of ways, without being aware of the other models that are out there, and at least understanding what works, what doesn't work, what's been tried, and maybe what hasn't been tried, I think being aware of those things is really important. And so I can say that one of the benefits to not reinventing the wheel, but sticking by innovation, is being able to try some things out that are new while relying on other pillars of a program that you know work. And that was very true over the course of our summers. So one of the things that we ended up discovering was that one-on-one interaction with our kids was really effective, and that's something that I think the program, which we used as some of our inspiration, already knew. But I think that we did things with our kids, on the other hand, that program didn't do, and that we wouldn't have been able to try had we not been thinking in sort of design thinking, brainstorming, research lens. And so I think that the one thing I would say is to keep in mind that you want to keep your feet in both camps. You want to be thinking about the ways in which you want to make things better and the ways in which you want to think in a new way. But that doesn't mean that you have to discard everything that exists around you. And actually, I'll go further than that. Not even discard, but if you aren't looking at what other people are doing, then I think you're not doing your job.
All right, good. Thanks so much, Jackie.
Yeah, that's awesome. Will and Olivia, everything you said, I'm over here nodding my head in agreement because I think you're right, and I think you guys have a great program that you can talk about. Kinetic in the courts is just so cool. It's so cool. It's so cool. Oh no, I've forgotten the question. Research and approach to research. I don't really have all that much more to say, except, yeah, I think you need to get out there and talk to people. I think that social media is a very useful research, and it kind of depends on which, what your topic is and what your project is, but just being aware of the way that people talk about different issues, the buzzwords that come up, and the misconceptions that people have, I think is really helpful and useful. And alongside that, I think what's really important as a researcher, as an academic, but also just in your day-to-day life, when you're reading an article, when you're looking at a source, thinking about what the inherent biases are will take you pretty far. So when I first started researching, I was in food insecurity, and so we were looking at a lot of things I'd never seen before, which was great and exciting, but made it difficult for me to determine what was reliable information. So a lot of stuff about sustainable agriculture and different farm subsidies and things like that, and thinking, okay, is this coming from a corporate source or is this coming from a government source, and what do these different stakeholders have in the game? What are they going to gain from publishing certain types of information, and what might they be leaving out? And I think when you do that, you become thorough, but also you become pretty efficient because you're reading between the lines and you're looking at questions. You're coming up with questions, and you might even be able to answer them more quickly than you would if you were reading more passively and with a less cynical eye.
All right, good stuff, Jackie. Thanks. Catherine, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, so everyone was pretty thorough. I think that people definitely great source. If it hadn't already been talked about, I would have said it first. I'll go a little bit more in a boring route on the actual background research, digging into articles. I would just say I started off just kind of going willy-nilly on Google, and didn't occur to me that I could and should be treating this sort of research like I would treat any critical essay, research essay for school. And then I realized in college you have access to all of these great databases, PubMed, things like that, and I think it is really important. Well, it is hugely important to talk to people, talk to stakeholders in the community about what's going on now. It also is an important component to understand the background and the history of the issue that you're working on. So I read for food insecurity, I read a lot about food policy. I read about what different government agencies have done in the past. So the government websites are good. The kind of university websites are good. Nonprofits that might be working on the issues that you're working on have research centers attached to them and publish lots of really good research articles there. And think tanks are also great resources. So yeah, I was just adding those sources there. And as Jackie said, hugely important every time that you are reading an article to key into who is writing it and what their biases might be.
Yeah.
Can I piggyback off of Catherine just for a second? I just want to say that God, yeah, I completely agree with what Catherine said. And I think there are a lot of people who get, we'll talk about this next, I think, Katie, but there are a lot of people who get frustrated with the brainstorming sessions because they think they're sort of silly or not practical and off the wall, and that's a waste of time. I don't agree with that, but I also think that research, like, challenge yourself and challenge your team to be rigorous about your research. Don't be okay with people bringing in, and don't be the person who brings in like the top 3 hits on Google, because that's just not going to get you anywhere, and you'll be able to talk about the issue so much more eloquently, and your time will just go so much further if you're being rigorous and creative about your research.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's a great point, Jackie. Okay, yeah, so moving into the design phase, just a few points that would be awesome if you all could touch on, like, how did you come up with your idea, what brainstorming methods were most useful, and what challenges did you encounter and how did you overcome them? So those are a bunch of different questions, and you can kind of choose where you want to focus. But Will, let's start you off with this question. So can you talk a little bit about your design phase over the past few years?
Sure. So I want to take you all to, I think I was in Bethesda, Maryland. It might have been changed. I don't know if it's the place. But imagine you're there and you're in a sort of a suburban neighborhood and you're on a walk with somebody else, and that person her name is Hannah. So just imagine you're walking next to somebody named Hannah. And she came up with the name Kinetic in the Courts, which is, I was walking with her and I sort of saw the light bulb go off in her head. And she was describing some things that our program ended up being. And so when I think about the inception of the program, I think back to that moment. But just to speak to design, that wasn't where our team started off. Our team really didn't know what we wanted to do. We started off as a flex team. And I think once we settled on juvenile empowerment, I think we only then, after working with that concept for some time, decided that that we wanted to develop an alternative sentencing program. And I think that grew out of a dissatisfaction with what kids in the justice system were doing, from their sentences, and also sort of out of inspiration. And I think that that's how good programs grow. We were inspired by programs like Shakespeare in the Courts and some other programs that provided kids who tended not to have a lot of opportunity, especially during the summer, with exciting, innovative experiences. And so I think that those were the things that made our design process exciting. We're trying to understand what made existing programs, what made them function and what made them effective, and then trying to construct a program that did those things as well. And so we ended up, it was called Kinetic in the Courts because we ended up basically constructing a micro version of Kinetic within the program, and watching our participants do brainstorming and sort of the same things that we had done was a really special experience. I think that it showed us what it's like to watch somebody else discover agency that they didn't know that they had. And I think that taught me something about the design process as well. I think it showed that that allowing yourself to, and in a lot of cases, forcing yourself to live in a state of figuring things out rather than knowing where you're going right away, and allowing yourself to spend some time before you find yourself in Bethesda, Maryland, and somebody puts into words something you think would be really effective is important. And it was something that informed a lot of what we did.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks so much, Will. Okay, Jackie, do you have anything you want to add into the design kind of phase of this conversation?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction. I am a firm believer that anybody can brainstorm, and you might not think like you're a creative person, but we have a lot of strategies. We have a lot of tips and tools and tricks to get you to start brainstorming. I basically believe if you can complain, then you can brainstorm. But the tough part and the thing that I think gets overlooked a lot is the synthesis portion. So I think that the hardest skill in design is taking the good parts or bringing out the good parts and connecting them to other good parts. And so that's the building part of the process, and that is more involved, and that requires more mental gymnastics and flexibility than just writing everyone's ideas down on a piece of paper. I think it's actually a really tricky and really delicate thing to do. It's hard to know when and how to best encourage ideas that are really exciting and make them useful. And I also think that it's hard to sort of put out the flame on ideas that are exciting and compelling, and you really want to work on them, but they don't actually serve the goal that you're working on. And so I think the greatest thing as a leader that you can develop and cultivate, I'm probably biased, but I think that is an overlooked skill that's really, really useful in the kinetic process and in the design process in general.
Yeah, that was great, Jackie. Thanks so much. Catherine, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, maybe I'll merge Will and Jackie a little bit in that I think it's a combination of like discipline, like as Jackie was saying, it's not just like our brainstorming activities that we created for Kinetic, and they're all like really, really fun, and they're designed to be fun, and they're designed to kind of make you feel like silly and goofy, because that's kind of where we always felt like the most spark for creativity. But I think there's also underneath that a discipline of just like practicing that and doing those activities, even if it doesn't get you somewhere useful at first, and kind of working on creativity not as a thing that you have or don't have, but as a skill that you can build as you get practice in asking the right kind of questions. And a combination of that and also those moments of inspiration, kind of like what Will was talking about. Like, for example, the first kind of inspiration behind the suspended groceries was I was on spring vacation lying in bed on Tumblr and just saw a post about something called suspended coffees that somebody else had done, and I was like, well, this is kind of crazy. What if we could do this in a supermarket? And I sent a screenshot to like our group text, and so that was a moment of inspiration, but also I would never have looked at that and thought of it in that way if we hadn't been kind of rigorously working on this issue from this design mindset.
Yeah, that's a great story, Catherine. I didn't know that that's how the idea for suspended groceries came along, so that's great. Yeah, so Olivia, is there anything that you want to add to the design part of this conversation?
Yeah, that's my favorite part. And the summer that Will was talking about is the summer that we were doing our brainstorming. We were all in different places except for Will and Hannah, because they got to hang out. And we did really fun things. We did really fun things using like Google Hangout software and like timed things and quizzes, and that was really cool. But the two things that I kind of want to hone in on that I think were fun, that I think were really helpful strategies for us figuring out what our program was going to be, was first we would have every week we'd be paired off into different pairs, and we'd be tasked to go talk or brainstorm about something in particular, and then we'd come back and present like kind of about the fun that we'd had with our partner and what we'd thought about. And so I really liked that we were separating from the big group thinking together collaboratively and then coming back to the big group. And the moment that I think we really found our idea is when we were writing down, we were all on a Google Doc, and we spent 5 minutes writing down things that empowered us. And I thought it was really, really important that we were using our own experiences to gather ideas for what we could do for those kids. And when we looked at everybody's lists of what empowered or inspired each of us, we saw that Kinetic was on a lot of our lists. And from there, we went from what inspires us to can we use that to inspire them.
Huh. Well, that sounds like a really cool exercise. I hope that some of our teams can take advantage of that. All right, great. So we're just here at our last section here, our implementation phase. So we don't have any teams that are in implementation phase, although the teams at Williams are, but our teams that launched this spring are kind of wrapping up their design phases. So this will be really good for them in terms of thinking about different things that they can troubleshoot. Before they actually get to those problems. So the two questions here that it would be awesome if you all could address would be, how did you find an implementation partner? And one thing or a few things that you wish you had known going into the implementation phases. So Jackie, do you want to start us off on this one?
Actually, can you come back to me? I'd like to think on it a bit.
For sure. Is anyone feeling ready to start?
I can say something on this to start. It's Catherine.
Great.
So the thing that I wish that I knew going into implementation is that everything will change. And that doesn't mean that all of the work that you put into designing what you want to implement is a waste. It was all a hugely important part of the process. It was building the scaffolding that you need, but it's critical going into implementation to be able to scale down, scale up, scale sideways, and just adapt everything that you have created, kind of using that background, using what you want the core essence of the thing to be, using all of the research that you've done, using the relationships that you build on your team, and like the skills that you've built in creating things and changing things and adapting things, and being ready to like adapt as you go into implementation. Because things definitely changed a lot for us as we were implementing suspended groceries, and just to be able to have that flexibility to like make it smaller in some areas, but like focus more on this based on the feedback we're getting from your partners. Because so also the thing is, we talk about implementation partner, but there are so many different partners that go into implementation. Mm-hmm. And just being able to be responsive to the needs of your implementation partners, because you can kind of think about that as you're designing ahead of time, but you don't ever really know because you're not an implementation partner. So you can't really know until you get into the process of implementing what is going to come up for them as what they want more of, what they want less of, what doesn't work for them, etc. And so that also is something where kind of more along the lines of Kinetic as a course and less along the lines of suspended groceries, if you're working with the people in your community who you are hoping that this thing that you're putting together will affect from the beginning, then it makes the implementation process smoother, and it kind of makes it more fluid between implementation and design, but it's also possible to do them both separately.
Okay, yeah, great. Olivia, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I really want to echo that idea of flexibility. Will and I have been talking a lot about our program, but I think we left the first day after meeting the kids and working with them, and both called our moms and was like, wow, this is going to be so different than we thought. And just having that flexibility and having people around you, like Will was for me, to talk to about that flexibility and what you're going to do next and how you can kind of pivot is really important. I think in terms of finding implementation partners and doing the work of implementing, we were lucky in that our partners were pretty established at the beginning, and they knew what Williams was. We were talking to them throughout the research project process. So we kind of made these big formal presentations and we're planning for having to do all this pitching and selling it to them. And we kind of got there for that meeting and they were like, yeah, we're in, before we could do our pitch. So that was really exciting. But I think that just key to that is something that I think Kinetic does really well, which is have really well thought out professional looking plans and confident people talking about the plans while kind of pitching it. And then, so that's kind of at odds with my idea of flexibility, but you can't go into a program saying we haven't yet decided what we're going to be doing every day because we know that it'll be all to the wayside after day one. You have to go saying this is what we're going to do and then later recognize that it's all going to fall to the wayside.
Great, yeah. I think those are all awesome points. Will, do you have anything that you want to talk about with this?
Not too much. I guess I'll just say that be aware that, implementation can feel like a triumphal moment where, the fruition of months of effort, and you shouldn't be worried if you get to that point and it doesn't quite feel that way and it feels sort of the opposite. I think that implementation was characterized for me as just a constant grind. And obviously I found joy in that grind with Olivia. But,
is he saying grind or crying? I'm not sure.
Grind. Grind. It is. And I think that I really cried. I really think that to have successful implementation, it has to be, you can't view it like a product launch that either goes well or flops. It's something that it's like raising a child, right? You have to be with it for years and years. So, except we were only with it for months, but you understand my point. So that's all.
Good, the grind. I love it. Okay, Jackie, we're circling back to you. Do you have some ideas for what you want to talk about?
Yes, thank you for coming back to me and giving me a little time to organize my thoughts. Yeah, I think I'd like to touch on two things. One, when you say, so I wasn't part of a group that was implementing while I was in the group. I was part of some groups that were successfully implemented, and that's awesome and exciting. But when you say implementation partner, I think of my Kinetic co-leader, Teddy, at the time. And our implementation, we went through a couple phases where we thought it was going to happen, and then it just never came to be. But we were still working towards the same goal and supporting each other and picking each other up, which was a hugely important part of it, because I think that if your implementation plan doesn't scare you a little bit, then you're not thinking big enough, and you're not really pushing yourself to the full extent. I feel like that might come across as a little cheesy, but I fully believe that. And part of it is because I think that if you have really been doing what you've set out to do, you are invested in the communities that you're working in. You know some of the people that you're working with, and it's important to you because it's important to them, and you want this to you want to build something that's going to make a difference. Mm-hmm. The only other thing I'll say is that I just sat in on a leasing workshop. A workshop on leasing and canvassing. I'm working in real estate, and that was incredibly enlightening. And the one thing, like the gleaming thing that I took away from that was you never sell on the first ask, which is trying to get someone invested and engaged in your project is never going to happen the first time they hear about it. So with Olivia and Will, I still think that holds because they've been looking for someone willing to help them with this kind of project with a problem that they had identified separately from Kinetic. And so when the resources came together, they were excited and jumped at the chance, but it didn't mean that they hadn't been thinking about it for a long time. So those are my 2 cents.
Right. No, that's great. I think all of those points are going to be really helpful to the different teams as they watch this video going into their design and implementation phases. Okay, so yeah, the last thing that I want to... Yeah.
Katie. Sorry, this is Catherine again. Can I just jump back in with one more thing?
Definitely, go for it.
Just to touch on, so Will and Olivia mentioned about how they had implementation partners kind of like going from the beginning. So just to say from somebody, so for Suspended Groceries, we did not. We like created this entire thing and then had to find, we were like, we have to find a grocery store who will do this. Just on that, we emailed literally every grocery store that is in the Berkshire area. We found a contact and tried to email, so there are actually not that many grocery stores, rural and small towns. But it's hard because kind of cold emailing or cold calling. We didn't hear from most of them. We heard from one to be like, no, and then we were very lucky that Wow Dose was interested and excited about our project and about working with us. So I would say like the first thing is kind of go broad, but then the other thing is if that hadn't worked out for us with Wow Dose, we were like starting to brainstorm, okay, well, if it can't be a grocery store, what about we look at farmers markets, or how could we talk about doing something like this in the campus dining halls, or how could we adapt this to like food trucks, not that there are food trucks in Williamstown, but like basically already getting ready with that kind of flexibility even from before, like, okay, if it go broad, and then if it's not going to work here, like how can we adapt it? And one of the things that would have been helpful on that too is kind of trying to find people like the professors and advisors and other group leaders, other team leaders, and what contacts they have and what people they know, and then seeing if there's anyone among those people where you could have some sort of introduction who, even if they're not doing the exact thing or they're not the exact type of partner that you're looking for originally, so you can kind of find that common value with that you could to strike a partnership. So I just say that on kind of going for it kind of cold without having that more natural implementation partner already.
Yeah, no, that's great, Catherine. I'm glad that you brought that up as well. I think flexibility, it seems like it's a really big part of figuring out how to best implement the project that your team's been working on. But yeah, so I would like to just kind of open this up for, before the students ask any questions that they might have, I just want to make sure that you all talked about everything that you wanted to talk about, and if you have any other thoughts or pieces of advice, it would be a good time to share them.
I think just like, good start. I just want to say that I feel like it got a little into the nitty gritty and kind of like, oh, it was so hard. Implementing is hard. Also, you have to work at all these things. But I also want to remind everybody that I had so much fun, and I mean, am having so much fun, and that I've met some of my best friends in the world through Kinetic, and it's truly a very special place. Aww.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Any Will or Jackie or Catherine, do you have anything that you want to add?
I'd just like to say that part of the major appeal for being a process mentor for me, for continuing to be a part of Kinetic, even though my time at Williams is gone and over, was I think that the people who are drawn to Kinetic are really cool, and they have great ideas, and they have the passion and the skills and the gumption to make it all happen. So we've done a lot of talking. The people who have spoken a lot are great people, and I love them dearly, but we would really like to hear from you and your experiences and your challenges, and and I hope that you'll really take advantage of us as process mentors, or if mentorship is not the way you prefer to think about it, sounding boards.
Amen, Jackie. I second that a lot, very strongly.
Awesome. Okay, so any other thoughts? I just want to make sure I don't cut anyone off. Okay, well, since it's...
No, I
want
to hear from them too. That's it. I want to hear from someone that's not me. So.
And that goes for the board members as well. If you're still listening, if you can hear me, excited to hear your thoughts about Kinetic and the experiences that you have with creative design or implementation, or, you know, I'm a young professional, so just the working world. Thank you.
This has been an awesome call. This is Don just saying it's been incredible hearing you guys talk about it.
This is Bob. I've been trying to occasionally wonder if this call had been when I was a sophomore or junior at Yale, whether it would have been anywhere close to the inspiration and quality of this one. I don't think it would have been. I think you guys are just unbelievable. I'm really encouraged by the future of the world with you all being in charge soon. I have spent some time in New York City in finance. I was a lawyer in a large law firm for many years, and spent some time working in the Senate and the staffs of a couple of incredible senators. So I'd be more than happy to talk to people offline if they have any thoughts about that. I've also been involved in the creation of the homeless shelter in Harvard Square over the last couple of years. It's all student run. So if there's anything that anybody would like to talk about separately, I'm more than happy to do that at any time.
Hi, this is Steve. I just want to second what the rest of the board members said about just how impressive this call has been. I'm really excited about the real self-reflective pieces, the embracing of failure, the ways that people take those experiences in real time and sculpt them and keep them moving, the recognition that it's never going to be what you envisioned, the willingness to follow something along, to keep giving it shape, but to really listen to the people that you're engaged with so that you're working alongside of them, not doing things for other people or expecting things to go a certain way when you're in those moments with other people, but to be alongside of them. I think all of those things, I heard the reflection on that, and the sharing of those parts of your experience, I think, is going to be what's going to be critical for people moving towards the implementation phase of their ideas.
Okay, yeah, great. I think it's really awesome to have been able to get everyone together on this call, and this is going to be a huge resource for all of our teams. I'll be sending out the link to this call to all of our different chapters so that they can share it among their teams. And then I think that will be a really good stepping stone for individuals that want to reach out to you all. So I think we're going to wrap up the call right now because I don't want to keep everyone on too late. But definitely we're going to really encourage people to listen to this call so that they can get more of a sense of what process mentors actually mean here at Kinetic Global. And then also really encourage them to reach out to you all. And I hope that you all in turn will reach out to them, especially after we send this out, so we can definitely coordinate things there. But if everyone kind of has said everything that they would like to say, then we can mark this as the end of the call. So thank you so much for hopping on. I guess Brian and Jessica, you can also kind of put in any last words if you have some things that you want to say. But thank you so much from my end. This was awesome. I really appreciate everyone taking time pretty late out of their Tuesday nights to hop on this call. I think this is going to be a great resource.
Great job, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a great night.
All right.